Hi everybody, that was fun. So we have Josh Radnor and Nuala Cleary here today. I think I'll talk to them a little bit about their process. And Nuala has a great story to tell.
I do.
And then we'll open it up to the audience. You want to start with your story? And Chris, anything you...
No, I know Nuala's story, but yes, you should tell that.
Yeah, so here's some 3 birthdays lore for you. I am a huge fan of Josh in many ways, as a person and also an actor, and I admire him very much.
Go on.
You're just great.
That's it.
And that's it. That's the story. But I have been a fan since I was a kid of a very wonderful TV show called How I Met Your Mother that Josh stars in, if you don't know it. And he was in New York doing a play back in 2014 called Disgraced on Broadway, and I saw that he was there, and I couldn't afford to go see it. I couldn't afford a ticket, and so I saw that he was at BroadwayCon signing autographs and taking pictures, so my little 13-year-old self went and took a picture with him, and I said, "Hi, my name's Nuala," and he said, "Oh, that's a great name," and that was burned in my brain for a long time. And then a couple of years later, got this part, and my manager told me who was going to be playing my father. And then we met and had lunch, and he said, "Hi, nice to meet you." I was like, "We've actually met before." Not to be weird.
It was shocking because I remembered everyone from BroadwayCon 8 years ago, except. No, I'm kidding. I don't remember. But did you told me that early on? Did we? You showed me the picture. Did we use the picture on the set?
We used the picture
On the refrigerator,
Yeah.
right? So we have this picture of us from like 10 years earlier, 8 years earlier, on the refrigerator, which I thought was so. And if you want to see it, it's on my Instagram page.
It's also on the Instagram page, yes, but it's also a little Easter egg throughout the film, which is really sweet and just very serendipitous. It was really lovely. So that's the story. That's the lore. Yeah.
We could have done it in Photoshop, but we didn't have to.
Didn't have to. I was 14. Me and my dad.
So Josh, this is the first time we've been up here. Nuala and I were up here last Friday night, but and we talked a little bit about the process, and it's like, what was your process? We didn't meet until after you'd been cast because the film was done during COVID, so I didn't meet any of the actors. Everybody was cast on Zoom, which was pretty amazing. It worked out pretty well, So anyway, I was just wondering more about what your process was. What was your attraction to this character, and then what did you do to become him?
Should we tell the other serendipitous story about your friend, the novelist, who told me that this was my role 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Remind me, her name is
Lynn Tillman.
Lynn Tillman. So I was at my friend Josh had he's a literary type, and he invited me to this dinner party he had, and there were all these novelists and memoirists buzzing about. And there was this lovely woman, Lynn Tillman, who I told her I was an actor, and she immediately said, "My friend Jane has a movie about a college professor and his wife, and you should play the college professor. I'm going to call her tomorrow and tell her." I don't think she knew who I was, or she just had a sense like this is the guy she's looking for. And then you told me this later, like my friend Lynn Tillman told me. So there's a lot of the stars aligned very nicely for this. Sometimes in a weird way, Jane, I feel like I figured out how to play the character when I was reading with you on Zoom. And I feel in another life I would have been a teacher. I come from teachers. My dad was a trial lawyer but taught at Ohio State Law School for years, and my mother was a teacher, and my sister's a teacher, and all of my aunts are teachers. So it's kind of in my DNA. And even, Mr. Mosby was a professor of sorts, a hapless one sometimes, but I always felt a kinship with professors, and I made a movie called Liberal Arts, which is about where I went to college. I've always loved and honored the mentor-student relationship, and it's just an important thing to me. So I've been the mentee, and in some cases now, as I'm older, I'm the mentor. But I really, I liked the era that this was set in. I think that there's something fascinating about people trying to break historic norms and try something new, and also watch them stumble and just be confounded by, they're confounded by what they're trying to break away from, and they're also confounded by what they're stepping into. And I liked that I didn't quite understand the politics of this movie. Like, I didn't understand, it was more like as an actor, because I also write and direct, but when I'm an actor, I'm pretty good generally at shutting off. I mean, I'll sometimes look at the monitor and be like, that's a beautiful shot, you know? But I'm pretty good at just putting on my actor hat. And it's really fun, and I don't want to play saints. Like, I like playing dimensional people, and this guy just felt like, he has some really spiky edges, and he has some really, he has some things about him that when I read it, I was like, ooh, like, you know, I didn't like him necessarily in certain moments, but I understood that he was up to something, and he was trying something. And my favorite types of characters are like well-intentioned people who mess up, you know, that they're trying something, but they can't quite get it right. And so this movie just felt like it was in that tradition.
Nuala, do you want to talk about your character?
Sure. Yeah, Bobby, I loved playing Bobby because I think there's something so pure about her in a way, where she, and I think everyone can relate to this in a certain sense, where when you are that age and you also haven't experienced a lot of life, everything is so huge and everything is the end of the world or the best thing that could ever happen to you. And so I think in this film, so many things, her worlds begin and end in so many different circumstances. And so I loved being able to explore the depth and the innocence of that, because I can relate to it myself. When I was that age, you experience your first love, your first heartbreak, your first time, and you build things up in your head and then it gets destroyed, like her idea of her parents and what they're like. And yeah, and I loved being getting the opportunity to explore how she navigates that, because I find that she's just, it was a very human character, like, you know, Josh said, but you also, Jane, do a wonderful job at creating characters that have such different nuances to them, and you create really beautiful, complicated people, which is always interesting to watch as an audience member and relate to as a human. So, yeah, love Bobby.
Thank you. Chris, would you like to tell some good stories?
I mean,
we had some, the Felician University. You could do.
Yeah.
That's a good story.
Felician, you know, when Jane first called me about this, we were going to shoot this in Ohio, and then I was looking at pictures of the college that we were going to go to, and I was like, wait, hear me out. Do you want to sleep in your own bed every night? We could do this in Jersey. And we did, because that college is in my town. But the party where Bobby gets really drunk and runs into Christopher, I don't know if you remember this, we shot that in Paramus, New Jersey, and we had buses there for all the extras. We had 50 extras. And at 1 a.m., they were off the clock. And we wrapped that day around 1:30 or 1:40 a.m. And as we were pleading with the bus, it's like, hey, the extras will be right back. You can take them all back to the city. They all just were like, we're off the clock, we're gone. And they took off. And we had, Anna and I had the next 40 minutes of frantically calling Ubers to get everyone back into the city. But besides that, shooting in Jersey for Ohio worked, I think. I really think it worked pretty well. And yeah, all of that was in our backyard.
I have a serendipitous story too. The movie theater that we shot in was actually the movie theater I went to as a kid.
Are you kidding?
Growing up. No, I'm not
I
even
love that.
kidding. Yeah, it was crazy. We got to set and I was like, I've watched movies here before and now I'm making one. And so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Lots of serendipitous.
Nina's house was my family friend's house. Jasmine Batchelor's character was my family friend's house. Yeah, there was a lot of visiting old haunts on that.
And just getting Felician University and
We-
rewriting the script.
That's what I was just gonna say. We had to, because it's a Catholic university, so we had to take some scenes out so that they would approve it and rewrite some things and make it seem like they all came together as a family unit and never strayed again at the end. You know, like, can we see the movie? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. But yeah, they were very supportive. We just had to lie to them for that. That's all.
Should I grab this? What about questions from the audience?
What scenes did you take out?
Most of the sex scenes, and the scenes where they discuss their infidelity or their arrangement. I don't know if you could call it infidelity in that arrangement, but we took all of those scenes out and then told them that the ending was that they got back together over the bedside of their daughter who was shot, and those pages were coming, and we flubbed the rest, basically.
Yes?
Hi, as a complicated Englishman, I want to say from the get-go, this was a wonderful movie. I mean, it's a shame Miss Parisse, is it Annie Parisse? She couldn't be here.
Annie
I
Perez.
tell you, the
She
three
had-
of you guys were, and I grew up in that era, even though I grew up in London, but we were certainly aware of the Vietnam War and Kent State, and I think all our hearts were in our mouths when they rushed to the hospital and Nuala survived. But I don't really have any questions other than just to say it was a fantastic movie and congratulations.
I have something. One thing I really liked about the movie, I mean, we obviously didn't have, $100 million to recreate the era, but I found that the way you collaborated with the designers, there were certainly, there were touches of the era, but it didn't feel, sometimes I feel like 60s and 70s stuff can descend into kitsch a little bit, or a little bit of like cliche kind of lava lamp territory. And I felt like you did such a good job of having it have a kind of subtlety and integrity to it. So it felt, it's like, I sometimes forgot we were in a period piece in a weird way, but in a good way, because no one knows they're in a period piece. Like, you're just in modern life.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious how you negotiated with your designers around recreating the period.
Well, I chose very well.
You did, yes.
It's such a collaborative project. And Jody Asnes, who was here yesterday but not today, was the production designer. And she was incredibly subtle and smart, and we discussed everything. And I don't like movies that are sort of overly art directed. So I didn't want to. We didn't have the budget to do more, but I also didn't want that. So yeah, I'm glad it worked for you. Yes.
Okay, I want to, first of all, yes, congratulations to all of you. You were fantastic. The performances were wonderful. Also, the girl that's playing the best friend was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
All performances were really terrific.
Gus Burney.
Yes, wonderful. I want to know how this project came about. Like, when did you write this? When did you decide on this becoming a movie? And how did you go about it?
Oh, I started working on it long ago, many years ago. And I started with the idea of 3 birthdays and 3 different points of view within a family. But I didn't start with Kent State, so that didn't come in at the very end, but it came in later. And then the thing that came in last was the voiceover at the very end. I had written so many different voiceovers for the ending, some of which are quite laughable. But I'm happy with this one. But it was a long process, and then, you know, once we were finally making the movie, as I said, it was during COVID, so it was a lot of time on Zoom. But a lot of things happened at the very last minute. How many weeks before we started did we get the house?
Oh, like a week before. And by the way, the homeowner just died, Maurizio. But yeah, we looked at, I don't know if you remember, we looked at a ton of houses. He was 90, he was a sweet, sweet man who thought we were making a porn in his house. And he was very upset for a very long time, and I had to bring my dad to set to assure him that we were not making a porn. But he was a sweet man. But yeah, we found that house I think a week before, and Jody had about a week to dress that with 2 people in her department. She did an amazing job, amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, all of those tracks were going under the train as the train was going the whole time. We didn't have a lot of time at all.
Yeah. But the thing we did that I was most grateful for was that we did have time for rehearsal. So we rehearsed for about a week. And that was enormously helpful. Yes?
Hi, evening. Congratulations. I feel like I'm going to reiterate the question for my friends behind me here. But what was it like the day you were shooting? Because I'm thinking like how serious the third act feels like after the shooting and everything. But then I just remember there's like a comedic beat where with the bird crap on the car. What was it like shooting with that, like that comedic break, that scene?
Was that with the sprinkler?
Yeah.
Well, we didn't shoot in order, so it wasn't like but we shot over 18 days, so it was very fast. And we have to switch that was part of the project, in that it has different tones in it, and we'd have to go from, Josh spraying in, that scene gets a big laugh.
It's so funny because I never thought of that as funny. I always thought, this is dark. Like thank God there's the water, because I think he was feeling like a lot of rage at that point. Yeah. And maybe that's why it's funny, because it's like, but it was always, I always felt so bad for Annie. I mean, she was fun, but yeah, I never thought of it as funny. So, but I don't think it's my job to think of that as funny. You know, I think I was just trying to play it seriously.
Also, you kicking a can gets me every time.
Yeah, that was improvised.
Yeah, there were always like a couple different takes of him smashing it and getting flushed out of the waters. It was so funny.
Yeah. I remember playing drunk is fun. I remember there's that great Uta Hagen thing in her book where she says drunk people are trying to act sober. Don't play drunk, play trying to act sober. Stay with me.
Yes?
I have a couple questions. I have one for Jane, because I remember being on set the day they reversed Roe v. Wade, and we found out about it on set. So obviously, there's the moment of hope for Nuala's character towards the end with that. I guess just generally, what's it like kind of seeing this movie come out now when maybe the cultural and political direction of the world is kind of like going in the exact opposite direction? And a bit more serious of a question for Josh. I remember some of the really nice days we had on set were when he brought his dog. And I just wanted to know, like, how's he doing?
Thank you. We'll get to that. Let's get to the less serious question.
So what is it to watch this film now in these very different times? Well, I think the most important difference is that was a time of hope, and now we're in more of a kind of time of despair. But that said, you know, Nixon was the president. Nixon was a really bad guy. So there are parallels, and there's the whole kind of question of gun violence is very much in the air now. So I think, you know, there are parallels and differences. I hope it speaks to people now, and isn't just about memory.
Nelson is doing pretty good. He does have, I took him to the vet, he has like a little skin infection that he was like kind of licking his thigh. So we have to put this like mousse on it, and he has to wear the inflatable thing, which if you want to see a picture of it afterwards, it's hilarious. But I'm really enjoying, he also has to take an oral antibiotic, and it's so fun to trick him with like turkey. I feel so much satisfaction when I trick him every time, with it, which I did just before I got here. So he's on the mend, but thanks for remembering him.
Yes?
Hi. I was wondering about another scene with Josh where it's like a short little musical part where you're like alone in the living room playing the guitar and singing. I was wondering how that came about, if it was like a song choice, like how was shooting that? I know you're a musician as well, so.
Yeah, Jane just asked me to kind of noodle around, and we had a couple of takes where it was just me playing instrumental. We had a couple of takes with me just thrashing on the guitar, getting angry after playing. And then we had this take of me playing a song that's one of my songs, and I never thought she would use it. I just thought I thought she'd use one of the other takes, but it's in there.
I like it. Yes?
Hi. Well, first of all, congratulations on such a beautiful film. It really touched me. Very, very emotional, and I love. I couldn't help but think that this could be somewhat autobiographical. And is it autobiographical, or do you know a Nuala? Is there a Nuala in your life?
No, it's not autobiographical in the sense that I grew up in Florida. My mother was a feminist, but she was a politician and a painter. Those are actually her paintings in the film. The geometric abstractions are her paintings. And I was so glad to be able to put them in because she died recently, and it's sort of a nice memory of her. But anyway, what was the question?
Do you know a Nuala?
Oh, is it autobiographical? So I was around that age at that time, but it wasn't me.
Okay.
But I also went to a lot of graduate school and taught, so I've known a lot of people who work in academia, and so that world was, you know, something very familiar to me.
Congratulations to everybody. And perhaps along the lines of the last question and a prior question around the set design, there is a quality of authenticity that runs through the film, the acting, the set design, the light, some particular scenes, cinematography. And I had a similar question around, is this autobiographical? And I guess my question is about authenticity and how you achieved it.
How did I achieve it in? Sure.
And it's a question actually for each of you, because the actors were so incredibly authentic, so real, so believable. It all was. And I wondered if you thought about that as a filmmaker, or what was guiding you toward realizing that quality? It didn't feel like I was, it didn't feel so overly directed or acted or staged. It felt real.
Well, that was what I wanted.
In a really wonderful way.
and it's so much about casting. I cast the right people.
I remember I had, one of my favorite scenes was just us in the car talking in the driveway. And I remember, I knew it was working because I forgot there were cameras. Like I really thought we were just, I don't know, there was a quality of just presence and conversation. And, you know, I've done more highly stylized stuff, but I find it actually like the biggest challenge. I know like the Academy Awards loves more like look-on acting kind of stuff, and some of that stuff's incredible and a high level of difficulty. But I always find I've done some of that stuff. It's actually harder to do this, and no one believes you because it looks like not acting. But making something look like not acting is actually really high level acting. Because if you I mean, God bless her, like, my wife's a therapist and she reads lines with me. She's not terrible, but she's not an actor, you know, like, she sounds like she's, like, mumbling, she's, like, trying to figure out how to make it sound, and it's, poor girl, I just threw her under the bus, but, I wouldn't, yeah. But I appreciate the challenge of, like, a highly naturalistic film like this. There's something about it that, I don't know, it calls upon something really, humble and modest about you, because you're not, it's not all fireworks. It's really, and sometimes some of my favorite moments of in this film is watching people listen to other people. I think there's a really like a depth, like a real sweet depth of listening in this movie, which I think helps.
Pattern of people learning information that they didn't necessarily want to know or want out, specifically when Nina is telling about the affair, or you telling him about the other affair, and yet ultimately Bobby didn't find out the whole entirety of her parents' relationship. What was the decision behind that kind of being the one secret that was kept?
Well, the film is about all these different kind of moral choices that people make, and I thought that it was an act of generosity and love on Kate's part, and I wanted to people to leave with that impression of her. This was a question about, for people who might not have heard, was about the ending, the voiceover at the end.
Question in the back?
One in the back.
Oh, one in the back.
Okay. I'm nervous to ask this because it's not much of a question, but I have the opportunity with like an actor and a director, but maybe more of an actor, to talk a little bit about such intimate sex scenes and what that's like when you take in a script and what you imagine and how you prepare and how much of a group effort it is to decide how to approach it.
Josh, you want to take that?
Well, we had an intimacy coordinator.
Yeah, we had an intimacy coordinator who was very helpful.
She was very good, and I've now worked with a couple, and she was excellent. Like right? What was her name? She was really wonderful. Yeah.
But yeah, she was. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
She
go
was
ahead.
wonderful. She. I think that there are different ways that people go about just coordinating the intimacy, as they say, I suppose. But she gave me at least so many options of whatever I was comfortable with was what we were gonna do.
Yeah.
And I also talked a lot with you, Jane, about what your vision was and also what I felt comfortable with. And this was for me my first time doing anything like that. So yeah, a lot of thanks to the intimacy coordinator.
Yeah, and it's also with some of those intimate scenes, like you clear the room and you kind of clear the monitor. So like Jane's there, the DP is there. It's the mic are kind of like preset, so you don't have a boom person just hanging out there. I did the only other film I've done with like that much kind of graphic stuff was this film Joey Soloway directed called Afternoon Delight, and me and Catherine Hahn had this. We had a couple sex scenes in that movie, but I remember the final scene was a shot of her having this like euphoric kind of orgasm to end the movie, and there were only 4 people in the room, and sorry, I'm talking about another movie, but she was kind of wrapped around me, and I was holding her up, but I couldn't get my back up, so Joey's knee was in my back to hold me up. And then Jim, the DP, was up like this, but he couldn't hold his arm. So Joey had his knee here, and was holding the DP's arm up like this. I described this to Dimitri Martin at Sundance, and he was like, "That's like the Iwo Jima of independent filmmaking." But you keep the room really small and really intimate. And by the time we were doing those sex scenes, it was like maybe week 3. I think we did them in the later part. And Annie and I kind of like circled around each other for years. We've been at weddings together. We have a lot of like deep mutual friends in common. So I think there was a kind of feeling of like, we're gonna like protect each other, and you know, it's a very strange gig. It's a very strange gig, and then you throw like sex scenes on top of it. It's very odd. But I just find staying communicative and you kind of work out, like, is it okay if I touch you here and here? Like, really not, you know, you want to allow room for spontaneity, but you also really want to make sure everyone feels safe. There's so many stories of, like, gross stuff happening on set, and I think people are like, no more, that's not going to happen anymore. And we're just bringing more accountability to it. And I never once really, I mean, maybe the masturbation scene was very odd, but I never felt like unsafe, or I think Jane just created an environment with the intimacy coordinator where we just do our job. It's a job.
I have a question.
Yes, Debbie.
Hi. Well, it's my 3rd or 4th time seeing it, so beautiful work, everybody. And one of the things I've always really appreciated about it is the Rashomon quality of, like, we're really getting each person's point of view through their birthday. And one of the things about that I really admire is the subtle performance shifts as well. But it brings the question up for me, because with each birthday, it's almost like the protagonist and the antagonist shifts. And so I was wondering, like, maybe for all of you, or maybe just Jane, you want to answer, like, who in your vision is the real protagonist and the real antagonist? Or is the intention that it just shifts according to perspective?
It's my intention that there is no real antagonist or protagonist. I think people bring you know, very different kind of identifications to these characters, and I hear completely different interpretations of, you know, what the relationship among them is, and people have sympathies. Some people have sympathies for Josh. Almost everybody is sympathetic with Nuala. I think in part because, you know, she's a child. But anyway, I wanted to keep it. I wanted to keep it so that you couldn't say, "Oh, this is the bad guy." People could do bad things, and you could think, "Oh, I don't like that." But then in the next birthday, that person does something that endears her to you. Any other questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
Do the actual birth dates have any significance to you that you chose?
Well, the one date is key because it's the date of Kent's Day. The other dates I just wanted a certain amount of time between the events, and I chose, and one is Earth Day. Any other questions?
I guess that's it.
I think it's
We did it.
over.